Alternator contact kit. Let me just cross that off my spares list because I don't need that one anymore. G'day Jafffa Adventures, Terry King here. Welcome to the channel. Well, the Queensland summertime is upon us full force. It's a hot one in the shed today. It's pushing 38 degrees already and it's only 11 o'clock in the morning. As I said in my opening remarks, this is a brush kit for an alternator for a 200 Series Landcruiser. Now, if you don't know why I carry this, either your vehicle use is mostly on the bitumen, in which case you'll never need one of these, or you actually use your car off-road. You don't know why I'd use this, but you should. I don't need this for my vehicle anymore. So if any of you viewers out there want a brush kit for a 200 Series Landcruiser, send me a direct message. You can find me on Facebook or go to the Jafffa Adventures homepage on YouTube and you can find my email address. Reach out to me and I'll send that to you free of charge. Now, why don't I need that anymore? Because I purchased myself one of these, a brushless alternator. You want to find out what a brushless alternator is, where you can buy these things, and how to install it? That's the subject matter of this video in my 200 Landcruiser maintenance series of videos. Stick around. So, this is what our brushless alternator looks like, and it's a direct replacement for the factory unit on your 200 Series Landcruiser. I believe the factory unit is around about 130 amps. This particular alternator is 150 amps. However, that is not the reason that I purchased this. The reason I bought this is because of the crap design that Toyota has with their alternator placement on the 200 Series. It sits really low in the engine bay. And if you run through muddy water or silted up water and you get a little bit of grit inside of that alternator, it'll chew those brushes out in an instant and your dash will light up like a Christmas tree. Jill and I are getting ready to head off on an extended remote trip. I do not want to be sitting on the side of the road pulling an alternator out, replacing the brushes. So I'm going to swap this out now in my shed in the relative comfort, if 38 degrees can be called comfortable, and pop this new one in there. Now you can go one step further than this. You can actually get a fully sealed alternator that's a water-cooled alternator. I don't need that. That's a little bit too extreme for my application. But what I do want to do is protect my charging system. Should I go through some muddy or silty water, this brushless alternator is not going to conk out on me. Now my car's got 200,000 kilometers on it at the moment, so although the alternator in the car is charging and working fine at the moment, that's another reason I'd like to get that out of there. I just don't want this thing to pack it in on me when I'm out on a trip having fun. And climbing underneath your car with your back full of bindies, swapping out an alternator is not fun. I've done that once already in the middle of the Simpson Desert in my old 80 series. I do not want to do that again. Now this alternator is manufactured by a company called Endura Drive, and they're in Salisbury in Queensland. I don't know whether you can actually buy it directly from these guys. Where I purchased the alternator through was VOP, V-E-O-P. I think it stands for Vehicle Optimization. Stuart Paternoster, if you're watching this, Stuart, I hope I got the pronunciation of your surname right. He owns and runs VOP and put me onto these brushless alternators. Now I paid full tilt for this thing, and to be honest, I don't actually know how much that was because at the time I bought this alternator and I bought a set of focal front speakers for the 200 Series. And those two items together came up to just over $2,000. But I'm sure if you reach out to him directly, he'll be able to line you up with these, no problem. I was very impressed with his shop and very impressed with the knowledge base that he has, specifically around these Toyota Landcruiser 200s. I don't think there'd be too many blokes in the country that would be able to match him from a depth of knowledge point of view. I've never had any work done at VOP, but just knowing repair shops and walking around that shop and having a look in there, it was pretty impressive to me. Now, I have watched a couple of YouTube videos on how this brushless technology actually works. Some of my Ryobi gear, like my grinder, for example, is a brushless unit. But it's proven technology that's got application across multi-different faceted areas. Well, that's enough rambling from me. Let's get stuck into installing this alternator.
If you're thinking, hang on a second, I'm putting in a brushed alternator, not a brushless, so therefore this video is not applicable to me, you would be wrong, because the external casing on the brushless and the brushed alternators are identical. So you can use this video as a resource for your brushed alternators, just like you can with this brushless. First thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery. I just don't want to be sending sparks down around that alternator area if I can help it. My second battery I don't need to disconnect because when I switch the key off, the main battery and the auxiliary battery disconnect from one another. But if your main and auxiliary batteries are linked permanently, you will need to disconnect both of those batteries. Next thing I got to do is take the serpentine belt off, or the snaky belt off. To get to it, I'm just going to take this cover off so that I can access the tensioner to get the belt off. If you haven't replaced your serpentine belt yet and you're doing an alternator replacement, that's a perfect time to do it because you've got to take that belt off anyway. Now I got to get this intercooler cover out of the road. Perfect time to get rid of this foliage. Now getting to this tensioner pulley can be a little bit of a biatch because it's in such a tight location. You'll need yourself a 14mm socket and a breaker bar. All right, my belt is off. Now you can't bring your alternator out through the top here. There's just not enough room. You can't bring it out through the bottom because there's not enough room. There's only one way, and that's through this side access area. The next thing you want to do is pull your tire off to gain access to the area where that alternator is going to come out. Okay, here's something that you may or may not have to contend with. I've got ARB BP51 and they're a remote reservoir shocky, and that remote reservoir is sitting here right in the hole where the alternator's got to come out. So I'm going to have to pull that remote resi shock out of there to allow me to get access to that. If you don't have remote resis, you can skip this step. Shift that up out of the road. There we go. That's opening the hole up a little bit. Well, I had a look at pulling this off, but there was just too many funky clips and bolts and shit. So I said, screw that. I think I can get it out there without taking that panel off. So next on my list is to get this intercooler pipe off. Geez, that clamp was pretty loose on its own. Yeah, same with that one. That was a little on the loose side as well. Got those two clamps off. Now I'll undo that 12mm bolt there. And no doubt there's one or two up on the top side as well. There's that lower bolt. Now I am undoing some of the intake piping here so that I can get a clearer view at what I'm doing. I do have two items of obstruction that you may not have, and I'll show you exactly what those are when I get to them. I've got two water lines running here that run to a heat exchanger, which sits inside of my bull bar. That's for my shower, so that blocks up a lot of the space. I've also got this large cable here, which runs to the back of my vehicle. If those items weren't here, I'd have a much clearer view down to that intercooler pipe. But they are, and I don't, so I'll have to keep digging. Okay, after a bit of fiddling about, I've got that intercooler pipe off, and that can push up out of the road now. I did have to take off this little wiring harness, which clips onto this intercooler pipe here to allow that to move up out of the road, but she's all clear now. Next step, I'll pull this plug off, and then I'll start to take off those 5 bolts that hold this alternator in. Yes, 5 of them. Unbelievable. Okay, that main plug is off there, and you've also got this one down here, which is your charging wire. And I've cracked that nut. It's a little 10mm nut, and I'll just take that one off as well. That's it, got him. So just looking at this alternator on the bench, I've just taken off that main charging wire and that plug there. Now I've got to attack the bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I look into that hole there, I can see 2 on the bottom, and I can't see any of the top ones. Okay, that's gonna be a struggle. We'll get in there with a wobble, and it looks like they're a 12mm. All right, I got those 5 bolts out, and that was not easy. I'm telling you, that took me a good hour. There's 3 on the top, 2 on the bottom. 3 of them, not too difficult to get to. That one there, very difficult. That one behind it, close to impossible. I had to take a bracket off of this black pipe going to the turbo so that it would give it a little bit of free movement. But anyway, that alternator is now ready to come out. So, next stage, try and fit it through this hole. Fingers crossed. It's coming. Got it. Holy cow cats. Okay, that was nowhere fun, nor was it easy, but it's out. Okay, I'm just looking at the two plugs. They're identical, and all of the mounting bosses appear identical as well. That alternator's still pretty quiet. She probably had some life left in her, but not if I was to run through a mud puddle. Okay, let's slip this sucker in there. Well, I've got everything buttoned up on the bottom side here. Apologies for not videoing, but you just can't see anything because, you know, even when I'm putting this thing back together, I'm playing by feel, not sight. It's just incredibly tight. One of the more shitty jobs that I've ever had to do on this Landcruiser. I'll give you the tip there. Anyway, this intercooler pipe is hooked back up. The black one behind it is hooked back up. 5 bolts are hooked up on the alternator. The belt's sitting in situ. We got our 2 plugs hooked up. Got our wiring harnesses all back in place. I've zip tied my water line here just because I don't want it to rattle and chafe against anything. We'll go up top side, button up the intercooler pipes on the top side, and I think we're ready to kick her in the guts and see whether we got charging. If we don't, it's time to close the shed door and have a beer. Okay, I got the snaky belt all hooked back up. Top side is all buttoned down. All the hose clamps are done up. I'm ready to kick this in the guts, and then we'll put a multimeter on this battery and make sure that that alternator is charging. There we go. 13.7. That's 1500 RPM. I think we can safely say we've got a charging system that's operating. All right, that job is finished. And I can say, hands down, unreservedly, that is one of the shittiest jobs I've ever had to do on this Landcruiser. That was not fun. I started at 7 a.m. this morning. It's 12 o'clock now. 5 hours to do the job. I'm sure if you've done it a few times, you could shave a few hours off of that. But for somebody that's never had a crack at it before, there you go, 5 hours, go to woe. It's charging beautifully, and I'm confident now that I can go through water with abrasives like dirt and mud and sand without chewing out any brushes, because I don't have any brushes. I'll tell you, you wouldn't want to do that job on the side of the trail, that's for sure. I apologize that I couldn't get the camera into those tight little spaces, but you got a little bit of an idea of what's in front of you if you take this job on. You can do it, just take some patience and take some time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until I see you guys again, keep your shiny side up. Bye now.